Nintendo is used to being on top. They're used to winning. They are not used to basically getting punched in the mouth.
Palworld was on the lips of everyone in the gaming sphere and beyond. It was actually kind of crazy. I wasn't going to talk about it, but I felt like I had some sort of obligation. So I spent the money to buy it. I spent the hours to learn it and understand it. I've read the incessant annoying arguments about it on Twitter and Reddit and YouTube and beyond. And finally, I understand all of it enough to where I can document what I have to say. I think that there's validity in both sides of the arguments, and some of it is, just a bunch of bullshit. I will share the good, the solace, and the bad, the dread, in a nuanced and fair discussion on what is aptly branded as the Hogwarts legacy of 2024, where it's embroiled in a bunch of controversy while also being insanely successful. I'm Solace. This is Solace and Dread. We produce analytical content as well as reaction videos focused on Square Enix, Nintendo, and Capcom publications. But as a casual fan of Pokemon, I felt a need to cover this. I need to be very clear here. I have a little bit of a bias, but I feel like it helps me explain this a little bit better. We've worked with the Pokemon Company in the past. We've been openly critical of Pokemon games lately, especially Scarlet and Violet. I'm also a giant Pikachu fan, having had a visceral reaction to Let's Go Pikachu's announcement trailer, only to be disappointed by the lackluster gameplay on release. But, I've only played 4 out of the 9 gens. I think that being a casual fan and having a relationship with the Pokemon Company puts me in a perfect spot to discuss Palworld and its sins with an open mind. The solace. First of all, once you get past the obvious, we'll call it artistic lifts right now from Pokemon and Breath of the Wild, and you actually play the damn game, it's a lot of fun. The Pokemon monster catching aspect is actually a smaller piece, right? It doesn't play like most of the Pokemon games do, no more than any of the other monster collecting games out there. Dragon Quest Monsters was actually a lot closer. Same for Monster Hunter Stories. It's important to remember that they don't own that genre of game, even if they are the major pioneer in it. I'd describe Palworld as a perfect mix of Pokemon Legends Arceus and Ark Survival Evolved or Ascended. Yes, there's pals that definitely resemble Pokemon, and then you make Palspheres or acquire Palspheres that you catch them in the wild with, that resemble Pokeballs. And then you travel with a party of 5 of them, and they aid in combat rather than taking the majority of combat. But you, as the player, are just as important in the combat, which is different from most of the Pokemon games. Then there's another major facet of the gameplay, and that's the survival and management side of the game. It's something that Pokemon probably should have considered at some point, by the way, especially in games like Arceus. The survival and base building aspect is a huge piece of what you have to do. You gotta make beds, you gotta make food, you gotta feed them, you gotta keep them from getting sick, you gotta keep them happy, have them do specific tasks that produce materials for you, all to make a big, well-working village that works to empower you and get you stronger and go into new zones where you find more pals so you can do even more with them. It's a really fun, self-feeding gameplay loop that feels engaging, if not addicting, and it's rewarding too. Not to mention that it makes it even more fun to do all of this with friends, and the visuals are decent enough. It looks better than any Pokemon game by a damn sight. The pals are really cute, and some of them do resemble Pokemon quite a bit, but well, this part I'll let Charlie explain.
A legitimate criticism to dislike how derivative some of the designs are and how it clearly borrows maybe too closely to quite a few of them, but it got out of control with people just saying that for every pal in the game when it's just absolutely not the case. But this is a legitimate criticism that I think is totally reasonable to have and hold against Palworld. I too would like if their designs were a little bit more unique. Does it ruin my enjoyment of it? Absolutely not. It definitely doesn't. Is it a bit of a blemish on it? For sure.
Now, I do think he's underselling it quite a bit, but he's mostly right. The pals largely look and feel original. There are some definite and obvious clones, and this is where we start to get into the dread. I'm not going to beat around the bush on the major sin of this game. They have clearly marketed this game as a Pokemon clone with assets that feel dangerously close to Pokemon. So much so that the Pokemon Company has responded publicly about the game, saying that they're investigating the situation to see if there's stolen assets, since they never gave any permissions. This is a big deal for them to publicly acknowledge this. Most of the time, they move silently or don't acknowledge anything at all. According to former Nintendo employees and YouTubers Kit and Krista, they're likely pretty angry and didn't see this coming, since there's an attitude that's anything that's not Nintendo or Nintendo oriented is usually seen as lesser inside the company, and they probably didn't think to worry about this until it was too late.
So when it's derivative of something that they've done so well for so many years, they're even less sort of on guard. So yeah, I think it's absolute. They're absolutely just completely shell-shocked in this moment.
Especially the last couple of years with the Switch, Nintendo is used to being on top. They're used to winning. They are not used to basically getting punched in the mouth.
Accompanying this on the other side from fans is an attitude that if Pokemon doesn't or can't do anything about it, especially with fair use not being applied to intellectual property in Japanese law, then fans shouldn't care. Perfectly encapsulated in clips like this from Pirate Software.
Exist. So with that in mind, if Nintendo wants to go after you, if you're in the US or Europe or anywhere else, because you're showing off Nintendo stuff, they have every right to, because there's no fair use in Japan. So if they're not doing it, why is everyone on Twitter pretty sure that Nintendo, one of the most litigious game companies in the world, would have more of a handle and understanding of the law than all of the armchair experts on Twitter?
Ethics go beyond the rule of law. Sometimes what is legal is not the same as what is right, regardless of whether or not Pokemon initiates a lawsuit and whether or not they win or lose. If you have eyes and a brain, you can see that some of these creatures are clearly done in bad faith. Look at them side by side. And sure, some of them are obviously going to be close. I mean, how many ways can you draw a snake or a sheep? But outside of those, yeah, it's sleazy. And at its most innocent, it could be called heavy inspiration. And at its worst, it's straight up theft of art. The artists of Pokemon are individual people, and wrong is wrong. It doesn't really matter if it's from a billion-dollar entity like the Pokemon Company. Also, if Pocket Pair, the developers of Palworld, is okay with, now we'll call it aggressively referencing other people's work, takes like Asmongold's commentary on art and AI hold weight.
If it was made with AI, I'm completely okay with that because it was fun. Artists' opinions don't matter. It just doesn't matter, because what matters is the opinion of the people that are buying the product. Like, it doesn't, like, your opinion on it, like, just because you do it doesn't, like, nobody cares.
He's out of line, but he's right.
At least in the context of Palworld being a product, using the Pokemon Company's art to sell their game, if they did, can hurt sales of Pokemon games in the future, and people might lose jobs because of it over time. And as far as accusations of generative AI being used in the game, none of that has been concretely proven, it's just heavily speculated, but if it was, that too would hurt the industry. I'll step off the soapbox a little bit and talk more directly about the game. The music, it's either middling or non-existent. It's also buggy as hell, but it's early access, and certain forgivenesses can be made. And the game feels soulless and doesn't really have like a story, so it kind of dries up. But Palworld did release a roadmap with everything that they plan to add in the future, including raids, world bosses, PvP, and so much more. It's gonna help to fix a bit of the problem. Palworld might be here to stay, even if it's in declining popularity by then. Linking everything together, the game is good. I would be lying if I said otherwise. It's its own thing and is not a Pokemon ripoff, in gameplay at least. They have a solid foundation and a roadmap for the future to keep people interested, but the art theft might be wrong regardless of the outcome of Pokemon's investigation. If people don't want to play it, I totally get it. If you do want to play it, hit me up. I'll play with you. Both sides of the arguments have valid points, but I'm just fucking sick of hearing about it. It might be time to mute Palworld on Twitter now that I'm done with this video. By the way, follow us over there. That's it from me. Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon. And long live the Turtle Kingdom.